point, and you can actually just spend time with all 18 ingredients.
Okay, it's your mic. I thought I was going nuts.
No,
someone is at my
me.
front door. It's driving me insane. I had to look at my phone for a second.
Yeah, I heard the Ring doorbell. That actually wasn't me, but the squeaking, that was my dog. So Daisy,
the Ring was me.
Thanks for coming on the podcast, Daisy. No, but
yeah.
It's time for Bourbon with Friends, the bourbon podcast that never takes itself too seriously. Pull up a chair, grab a glass, and remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Here we go.
I've got a promo code set up for you too that I can share at the end for the listeners.
If you want to give it to us now, that way once we post this up, it'll actually Joe can have it at the bottom.
Sure. So it's BWF Bourbon with Friends 10,
yep.
The number 10, and that's 10% off any order. I have it set right now through the end of November. I don't know. Do you know when this plans to air? Like, is it a pretty quick turnaround or?
That's going to be on Joe when we think that's going to be a turnaround, but it could be in a couple days or it could be next week.
It all depends on, usually it's a consensus of what we have released.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know on Friday we're supposed to release another one, right? We want to release something on Friday with the Kelly or Crystal, whatever her name is.
Crystal King, yes.
Yeah. So it would probably be
next Friday,
either next Monday or.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
Not next Monday, but would it be Veterans Day? Because Veterans Day is probably going to be Seth, right?
Yeah, we're doing Seth on Veterans Day releasing.
Yeah, so it'll probably be the middle of November.
Okay.
Now listen, we might do something like we might do a Friday release because it just all depends on how long it goes. Usually our shorter ones, we'll throw like a little extra.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is I can move the expiration date out. I want to give everybody enough time, but not so much time that it's like, oh, I've got 2 months to do that, so that I'll never go purchase. But if it lands mid-November, are you guys comfortable with having the code expire like December 1st? Does that work?
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you. I would probably say if you're doing something like that, middle of December, so people can get it for holiday presents.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Let me create the banner, and I will step off.
All right. You ready, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bourbon with Friends. It's just me today. And then we have Chris here as well founder of Knows Your Bourbon. Is this correct?
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Welcome. So give me a little background on what Knows Your Bourbon is and what got you into this realm in 2015, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, you're spot on. So when I got into bourbon, like most things, I like to dive in the deep end and read everything I can online. And so bourbon was no different. I started reading, professional bourbon writers and the tasting notes that they were listing for what they were experiencing. And my palate was just not able to pick up these notes. And I'm like, these guys are either completely full of it or there's some training or something that I can do to get my palate to that level. And I need to figure out, which is which. So that sent me on a journey to research, is there, sommelier level training designation for bourbon? How are folks able to pick out these notes, right? And so I came across the concept of bourbon nosing kits. I didn't create the category, but what I found out there was basically little vials of clear liquid that are artificially made scents that should smell like cherry or leather or vanilla, brown sugar. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, but they're kind of expensive. They're $150 to $300. They're not the authentic natural scents, and so that's kind of like, oh, I don't love that. Maybe I can make my own for a fraction of the price, and it'll be mine. It'll be real ingredients, so that's kind of a cool aspect to it. So that's what I set off to do, is just make the first one for me. I had some success with it. I found that, man, the more time that I spend with these ingredients of actually smelling real dried cherries and, plum and allspice, I started to have a vocabulary for that when I'd come across that note as I'm nosing bourbon. So I was sharing my success on bourbon groups on Facebook, and folks were like, "This is fantastic. Like, how do I get one?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let me get back to you on that. I don't even have I wasn't really planning to sell it. It was kind of for me, but I'd love to figure that out. So let me do some work and I'll get back to you." So started selling kits direct through Facebook Messenger. That was a mess. Don't recommend that. Finally put out an Etsy shop. I think that was late 2019 or early 2020 on Etsy. Got really fortunate to be picked up by Bespoke Post, which is an online retailer. They do a bunch of really cool, everything from, weather gear to
watches
axes
to knives.
Yeah, exactly. Hunting, fishing, the whole thing. So they picked me up and said, "Hey, we love your product. Have you considered wholesale?" And at that time I was like, in theory, I know what wholesale is, but I don't even know what type of partnership you're talking about. Let's talk. And so they picked up their first wholesale order and it sold out in 2 hours through their email list. And I was like, okay, there's clearly some interest here. So like, how do I figure this thing out? It's just me at the time, and the business is still just me, but I have brought in contract help as I need help putting the kits together, because this is my side hustle. This is not I have another full-time job. And almost all of the, production of the kits happens out of my house. And so I get to see a lot of what's going on. I have a part in the quality control process. And so I still, feel good about what's going out to market.
Nice. So, I was looking at it. You sent me a very nice kit back here, and I've reviewed it and gone through the smells and everything like that. It's kind of unique doing that natural baking spice smells coming out straight either from, because I grabbed one of my baking spices and compared it to yours, and it was kind of unique doing it that way, because different climates have different moods, and playing with this elevation is not the same as playing it probably at your elevation. So
that's totally true. And a lot of times I get questions about well, how do I use the kit? How does this thing help me? Right. So there's two ways that I kind of tell people to approach it. If you've been around bourbon for a while and you started to get into some of the categories, when I say categories, I'm referring to a bourbon tasting wheel. So this is included with every kit. If you've never seen one of these, you can Google them too. They're all over the place. But usually a bourbon tasting wheel is going to have 5 major categories: fruit, wood, grain, sweet, and spice. So that's a great place to start. If you're brand new to bourbon, or even if you've been at this a while and you're like, I can't pick out hazelnut from graham cracker. I'm just not getting those specific notes. Where do I start? Start in the center of this tasting wheel. Does it smell or taste woody? Does it smell or taste sweet? That's a great starting point. And don't beat yourself up if that's where you are for a while. This stuff takes practice, but this is the best type of practice you could ever do, right? So if you can get fruit, that's an awesome starting point. And where the kit comes in is you look down and see the color-coded area that has fruit. I actually have 2 different major kits. There's the original kit, which is 18 of the most common scents that I found from thousands of tasting reviews. And then there's the expansion kit, which really focuses on bringing more fruit notes to it. There's I expanded on the wood and kind of nut categories as well. So you'll find things like toasted hazelnuts. But what's interesting, if I've identified fruit in the glass as I'm nosing, you can turn down to the kit and see everything in green is going to be a fruit, and I can spend time going through each one. Is this plum? Is it more of a floral fruit note that might actually be like rose or potpourri? Is it plum? Can I differentiate that from apricot? Is it more of a stone fruit, right? So that's one way. The other way is, you don't even have to have a glass of bourbon in hand. You can actually just spend time with the kit. And what you're doing is you're recreating scent memories. If I say right now corn, or if I say leather or black pepper, you have an idea of what that smells like. But when's the last time you pulled out, the black pepper grinder while you're nosing bourbon? Probably been a while, if ever. So this is a way to shorten that distance and that time between I'm having to think back to a memory versus I have it right here as a reference point.
I was going nuts. Someone is at my front door. It's driving me insane. I had to look at my phone for a second.
Yeah, I heard the ring doorbell. That actually wasn't me, but the squeaking, that was my dog. So Daisy,
the ring was me.
Thanks for coming on the podcast, Daisy. No, but
Yeah.
it's really a great tool to just be able to spend time with these aromas and say like, okay, even just blindfolded with a specific, scent, I don't have to have a glass of bourbon. I can just say, this is wheat, this is rye. Okay, I'm training, I'm recreating those paths in my brain.
Okay. So I know based off your experience, right, you probably broaden your palate a little bit more or your nose a little bit more based off of the kits that you're actually doing, right? So currently today we're drinking two different products.
Yep.
We both have a larceny that we're going after right now. And then from that larceny, we're actually doing Woodinville, but two different Woodinvilles. I'm doing the Sauternes finish and you're doing their normal bourbon.
Yep.
So, but we do have the same larceny pick, so that's great.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
So this,
I want to get your thoughts, just right off the bat, of what your basic, or not your basic nose is, but what are those nose in the front and the back of that nose palette? What are you getting off of the larceny to go with first?
Yeah, the first thing I got when I picked it up was this butterscotch sweetness. So, if you start with sweet, that's a great place. Inside the kit, you'll find things like caramel, vanilla, honey, chocolate, brown sugar, just to name a few. And you'll find that like, actually butterscotch is not one of the notes in my kit. So like, oh, well, how did you pick out that note? Right. So just as I've spent more time in this space, in this headspace of thinking about scent, thinking about aromas, if you ever go to a farmer's market or if you spend time in the kitchen baking, like be curious about the different scents and spices and things that you're pulling. It will actually help your kind of library of things to pull from. So I get that butterscotch right off the bat. Maybe a little bit of honey. There's a spice, but it's in the background. I would not say that's a prominent note. And I am. I think that's the most I'm getting off the nose. Usually what you'll find is that you get a nose up front and then you go to a taste and you may be able to come back to the nose and pick up more. So what I like to do, I think we're all drinking out of Glencairns. I think it's the ideal glass for this type of things.
A little different. I'm actually drinking out of a wisdom glass.
Oh, I see that. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the similar taper to it, right? So like the fact that it comes to a more concentrated top is going to help concentrate those scents, especially if you're dealing with lower proof bourbon. So if you have like an 80 proof or 90 proof, if you're drinking out of a rocks glass, you're going to have a really, really tough time getting any nose off of that. So I like to give it a little swirl, just get some air moving. And then you'll notice I'm keeping my mouth parted as I go into nose. That, especially as we get into barrel proof bourbons, can be really helpful to not just blow out your olfactory sense right off the bat. If I come into 140 hazmat bourbon, it's the first alcohol that I've, drank or nosed today. Like that's probably the last thing I'm smelling for the next 15 minutes because my nose just goes, what did you do to me? So be kind, but come in here and that I think that it's a little bit of a black pepper, maybe a clove spice that I'm picking up there. So yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of unique. So you're just doing the basic palette. So I'm curious and most of our viewers are experienced drinkers or people who have started drinking and like to push it out a little bit more. But what's something that your nose is picking up? I know you have a little bit of a head cold right now. It may be a little hard for you. Is there anything unique or interesting? Because sometimes I pull out some kind of unique stuff based off of the experiences I've had around the world from eating different foods or things of that nature.
I love that you say that because, we can get really like rigid with this whole like, oh, let me find a specific spice from my kit or from my baking spice cabinet that I'm trying to identify this to. But like, what if it's an actual memory? What if it makes you think of going to the fair and it's fried foods or it's funnel cake or, I was tasting with some friends last night and I got this this chalkiness, and I was like, oh, where have I had that before? And I asked my friend, I was like, did you collect baseball cards growing up? He's like, totally. And I was like, what's inside the pack when you open the baseball cards? He's like, there's the piece of gum. I'm like, right. And what's all over the gum? He's like, some type of white powder. I'm like, yes. I don't know what that is, but that is the chalky like finish that I'm getting on that particular bourbon. And he was like, holy cow, you're totally right. Like, so it was cool.
Yeah, no, it's kind of unique. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. I pulled out dragon fruit out of, was it last week or the week before? Yeah, so he's shaking his head yes. You can't see him, but he's shaking his head yes in the background. I did pull out a tasting note that was dragon fruit on our last, Casey Jones. That's who we were interviewing. That's where I got it from.
And that's a great point because, I can't, I think the joke in the bourbon industry is like marzipan. Well, like, I'm not going to get marzipan out of this if I've never tasted marzipan, right? So like your own experiences. And jasmine rice, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, your own experiences in the kitchen with spices as you travel, as you eat and try new foods, like you're going to expand your palate. So, yeah, that's a super valid point.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't matter where you guys are at around the world or what you're trying. Try the spices that you have in your cabinets to try to compare it. Yeah, the most basic spices that you're going to get are that cinnamon, cumin. You have a ton of them on here. Black pepper, clove, honey, chocolate, brown sugar, cherry, oak. Mm-hmm. Look at those different things that you guys have in your cabinets and try to compare that to the bourbon that you have on hand. And then just get wild with it. Yeah. Grab some cardamom, grab some clove. If you want to go nuts and spend a lot of money on like a tiny 2 millimeter bag, get some, what is that spice, Joe? It's red. It's a leaf or a flower.
Saffron?
Saffron.
Yeah.
So
we bought that for a recipe. I'm like, what is this? Why is it so expensive?
I was able to get a shit ton of saffron from a friend who went to the Middle East and he brought it back. So I didn't pay, I think I paid $20 for a third of a pound of saffron. So I have a ton that has been in Ziploc bags, and put in the basement so it doesn't get ruined.
But I am getting... and sometimes like candy sweet notes will come out. So obviously not like it might be more that, I'm getting cinnamon, but this is like atomic fireball cinnamon versus like naturally occurring cinnamon. So almost that artificial ramped up candied version of something. Candied ginger, for example, you might find. Yeah.
Are you getting that off the nose or off the palate?
Oh, sorry. I was just talking in general, not in this particular pour. Yeah. This one, I'm actually getting, there's some sweet fruit notes, and I'm trying to figure out if it's leaning more, it's actually feeling more like a red delicious apple, kind of in that realm.
I was either going to say that or honey melon.
Yeah.
So you're getting that sweet note, but you're getting the bitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get that red apple as well.
Yeah.
Almost a dried red apple.
And
so it's kind of unique.
This is a relatively fresh pour. We just poured this a couple minutes ago, or at least I did. But something you'll find too is as the glass sits out over time, especially a barrel-proof bourbon, it's going to evolve. It's going to change. It's going to open up even on its own without adding water. You can certainly add a drop or two of water. If you want to help that process along. But if we came back to this in 30 minutes or an hour, we might get totally different notes because some of that alcohol vapor has burned off.
Oh, what I recommend is if you guys are done with your glass for the night, don't pour it. Drink the rest of it. Don't pour it out, please. Don't waste alcohol. That's alcohol abuse. But let that glass sit over the night and just come back to it in the morning and try to smell it then. It's going to give you a completely different texture ever. Yeah.
I don't know the science behind that. I guess maybe all of the alcohol has evaporated and all you're left with is the flavor compounds. I don't know exactly what happens there, but I've experienced that so many times. I'm like, even my wife who doesn't drink bourbon, I'm like, smell this. This is incredible. She's like, okay, yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So based off this, I'm curious on what you're going to get on the palate now. And then we're going to get into one thing that we always do with our guests and ask a obscure question. But let's get into the palate first, and then I'll get into the obscure question. I want to make sure you actually have some alcohol in your system before I ask this question.
Okay, so you're buttering me up. I see.
No, 100%.
The very first flavor or note that came to me was hot honey. So like Mike's hot honey that you buy at the grocery store. But that kind of play on that sweet and spice, which that's some of my favorite things in foods, is to find those compound or those flavor categories that come together and kind of pull at each other. I love that sweet and spicy. But yeah, hot honey.
And you got that off the front end?
It's not so much
it's not on your front palate?
Yeah, kind of more mid palate.
Mid palate? Okay.
Yeah, tip of the tongue, I typically get your spice notes, right? So like, and it can certainly be like side of the palate, side tongue, where it just grabs onto you. And those are some of my absolute favorites, where that finish is super long and just hangs on. But this is a little bit more mid to tip of the tongue.
Okay. Yeah, normally it's kind of unique. When I get into a whiskey, I usually drink it early in the morning when I'm reviewing it. I want to have a fresh, clean palate even before my coffee, and sometimes I hate myself for that.
That's a great point, that, you know, the things that we've consumed today, especially if we had a spicy Thai lunch or something like that, like your palate is going to be affected by that. So just
absolutely,
if you're sitting down to taste something really special, you just got a sample of, or a bottle you couldn't wait to open, maybe skip the black coffee that afternoon, because your palate is definitely going to be affected by that.
Yeah, I'm getting I'm not getting that jasmine rice this time, Joe or Chris, but
yeah,
I'm getting something kind of unique. It was a particular rice I had back in Southern California at a friend's beach house in a place called Oceanside. Really nice family. We grew up together, always went over to their place at least a couple times a year before I joined the military.
Yeah.
And this was a sticky rice that they had onion chives, they had some sugar, black pepper. Then they cut up some almonds and did almonds in it with a coconut amino acid drip while they were cooking it at the same time. So I don't know how to really explain that rice, but it's almost like a white sticky rice mixed with all that together.
Yeah.
That I'm getting. It's brought back really good memories. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. This is crazy. I normally get this on an older bourbon. I don't know if we have an age statement on this batch.
It's always over 4 years.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out something that I usually get on like
6 to 8 year.
6 to 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Usually on like a 12 to 15 year bourbons where I'd find something like this, but I'm actually getting some tobacco, like a pipe tobacco, which is really nice and something I love to find, but I don't find on a lot of 6 to 8 year bourbon. Interesting. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that it's wheated versus a rye forward bourbon.
No, 100% has to be.
Yeah.
But it gives out such a unique flavor profile that you're able to try different ways and means of it. So it's exciting to see that and how it's grown since I opened it. It's gone down a little bit this year.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't tell, Joe, you'll get a sample of this before it goes away.
Yeah, I still got quite a bit in there. Yeah.
But
This is getting really sweet on the nose just as it sits here. Like as I keep coming back to it, like it is just a sweet bomb. And you know, you could say chocolate, and I don't think that would be off. You could say, you know, vanilla. But that brings another interesting point. Like especially when a handful of folks get together and you start sharing tasting notes, what you experience is accurate for you.
100%.
So if someone's like, I'm getting, you know, red pepper and someone else is like, no, you're not. It's like, you can't, like, you can't say what you're experiencing. So don't ever let someone make you feel bad if you throw out something. You're like, oh, I don't want to say this. And then you toss it out. But be aware of the power of suggestion, right? So if you're the first 100%. Person in the room to say saffron, amazingly, everyone starts tasting saffron. Like, wow, that's crazy. So be aware of that.
We had, like I said, we had, I was about to say Cody Johnson. That's not right. Casey Jones on recently, and he gave out a note of kettle corn. Ooh. And none of us had kettle corn like notes that we were giving out, but he provided it, and all of us later on started to taste it. I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't like this game anymore. But he said he got that from a friend of his that was trying it, and it just came out serendipitously, and now it's one of his primary notes that he has on there.
That's so funny. And if you think about, like, what does it take to make kettle corn, right? You've got the corn note, popcorn, then you've got the saltiness, and then you've got the sweet. So if we had just said, oh, we think this larceny has a corn forward thing going on, and it's salt, has a salty or brininess to it, and it's sweet. It doesn't take long to put those together and go kettle corn. And so, think of food pairings and things. I got a, this is going to sound so weird, but I got this peach cobbler note on a bourbon one time. And then it was like, okay, you're getting that baked kind of doughy.
It doesn't sound weird at all, right?
Yeah.
Because
you're getting the peach.
No.
Yeah.
I live an hour away from an award-winning peach farm in Palisade, Colorado. So
heck yeah.
I go up there all the time, grab Palisade peaches, bring them down here, can them. And in the distillery I work at as well, we use Palisade peaches for our cordial.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. Very cool.
Mm. Oh, that was good. That was
really
good.
Tasty. I forgot how good this is.
I know, that's why I finished it. All right, so I got another question for you.
Yeah.
This is the question we ask all our guests.
Okay.
It's kind of unique in a way. We started out writing these questions or doing these questions episode 1 when we took over the podcast with Bourbon with Friends. And it was because Adrian, well, the story changes every single time. Adrian had a squirrel in her bedroom window watching her from the backyard. And we were recording our first ever podcast, and it's kind of changed over a little bit. But we always ask a squirrel question now just to throw it out there to get your mind on something different and move in a different direction completely. Because sometimes talking about whiskey is amazing, but you want to make sure your mind goes somewhere else first. So this question came from Joe. He wrote this one. It's, if a squirrel was a scent in your kit, what would it smell like and why?
Huh. I think there's probably like a wild gamey, if you've had, venison and other wild game before. I think there's probably some gaminess to that. Like, I've not brought a squirrel in to smell it, so I'm not sure. Something also tells me there's going to be some spiciness to that. I don't know if that's like black pepper, if I'm leaning into that more towards, the color and the look and feel of like the squirrels here in Georgia are all pretty much black and gray. So there's some of that. And certainly there's going to be a nuttiness to it, right? Like from the diet alone, like we're clearly in acorn territory. We're getting some, nutty notes out of that.
So you're going to get a nut spice game note that you're going to put all in one.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Like you have a combined scent that's just, Scent-O-Squirrel. Scent-O-Squirrel.
You better name that after us now. This is, I want that patent. Nut-O-Squirrel. That, or I'm going to make that into a shirt.
Yep.
But that's perfect. thank you for answering that because I didn't know how to fucking answer it. So at least you did. I said I would have boiled it, cooked it, and thrown it in a stew.
Yeah, we just finished one of the seasons of Outlast, one of the survival shows where it's like a team-based, survive in the woods for 30 days type thing. And I mean, there's a lot of squirrel going on there. And you're just like, it's so much work. Like the guy finally shot it, and then he's got to like skin it and cook it for like, what, 2 ounces, 3 ounces of meat? I'm like,
oh, it just really depends, right? You can skin it. You can skin a squirrel pretty quick if you know what you're doing. But I'm the only hunter probably. I know I'm the only hunter that's on our podcast that does anything like that. So I go around, do big game and small game for veterans and first responders and everybody like that. So I guide all around the world, especially here in Colorado. I'm guiding actually next week. This week. It is Sunday. So this week I'm guiding a hunt for some veterans. Very cool. Let's get on to the next bourbon or next whiskey, because technically mine is a bourbon. It's just finished in Sauterne cask comparative. Okay. So we're doing the wooden bill now.
Yep.
And you have the regular bourbon. What's your regular bourbon proof so people know?
Yeah, so this is a private select from a local liquor store up here called Hops, Grain, and Vine. It's 119.9 proof.
Okay.
And this was like a COVID pick, and I went back and it was so good I bought a second bottle. So I'm really. It's been a while since I've returned to this one.
Well, I would hope, since it was COVID about 4 years ago, almost 5 now, that'd be a little difficult to go back, right?
This is my backup bottle, so I pulled this one out and cracked the seal on it. But
there you go. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right away, and anytime you're on your second bourbon of a flight or a comparison, you start to compare, right? So this smells a little bit younger. I'm getting a little bit more of that kind of young corn note, but it's not in an off-putting way. Sometimes you get that, you're like, ooh, this needs more time. But just right away, that was kind of the youthfulness coming through in the corn was the first thing.
What would you consider a young note in corn, and why?
Almost like a green banana, right? So it's not quite ready, and you're like, oh, I bet this banana is gonna be awesome. It's ready, and you peel it and you take a bite, and you're like, oh man, it's green. That kind of like not fully ripe situation. That's the closest thing that comes to mind for me. Yeah,
fair enough.
And there's a baked bread aspect, and so we start to talk about those flavor combos. Like I'm leaning cornbread. Like this has got this like fresh baked cornbread thing going on.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything because we're drinking two fucking opposite whiskeys right now. Same company, but opposite.
That's true.
And everything.
Very different.
Yeah.
There's a little spice. Leaning black pepper spice, I believe.
Okay.
Not really getting a ton of fruit. I think that if I had to pick one of like what's the primary note, I'm leaning towards that cornbread combo.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this in comparison, right? So I'm guessing you haven't had the Sauternes finish, which just came out recently. This is kind of unique. I've been getting a lot of different things off of this, just right off the nose. So it's almost honey-baked ham.
Ooh.
And then
you get some of that kind of saltiness, that sweet.
You're getting the salty, you're getting the sweet, you're getting that umami bitter at the same time.
Ham,
yeah. You're getting that runoff juices, and I'm almost thinking it's a honey baked ham coated in almost maple sugar, because it's given that high sweet context, but almost like that burnt sugar as well.
Well, that sounds awesome.
And then it just makes me want to drink it even more. Joe brought up a pretty good question, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, right? So he asked a pretty good question based off of what you're getting now. When your nose isn't killing you, when you can actually breathe again for a second, is there any particular notes that you're getting off of this Woodenville that you are with your tasting kit? Like which ones pair to it appropriately? And it could be your basic, it could be your extended kit. Which one's which?
Yeah, I think the corn, for sure, back to that note, is 100% prominent. Some of that honey sweetness. So like cornbread drizzled with a little bit of honey on top. Let's see. There's a bit of a nuttiness, and I'm between walnut and hazelnut before I nose them. Let's see.
Okay.
I think it's more hazelnut, like a toasted hazelnut note that I'm getting, but leaning very sweet, very corn. Yeah, it's that like fresh off the skillet cornbread with a little bit of honey. Honey.
I would love to do that Vance one with you. You sent me your basic one, which I love.
Yeah,
but it's kind of hard to be like, oh yeah, it smells like hazelnut. Look, peanuts.
Yeah, nuts. It's nutty. Yeah, yep. So I've included peanut in the original kit.
Yeah,
and with the expansion kit, you've got almond, pine, walnut, and hazelnut.
Okay,
just to take those a little bit further, because the most common one that I get on, especially on a lot of Beam products, is that peanut, almost that peanut brittle kind of combo. But
right.
Yeah, I felt like the expansion kit could grow on the nut and wood side of things too.
That's also what she said.
That's fair. I like that.
Yeah.
I just teed that up for you.
Well, I mean, someone had to say it for once.
I was
based off of your palate that you can taste right now because of your cold or your head cold. Is there anything that in particular that you're pulling out of this Woodenville that you wouldn't normally pull out because of your tasting kit?
There's a citrus note that is starting to come through mid palate and on the finish. In the expansion kit, I included orange and lemon peel. So
yeah, I see that.
This is leaning orange for me, almost like if you've ever had an old fashioned with like a flamed orange, like that kind of burnt orange situation going on. I think orange is there. I may not have been able to pull that without the kit. There's some baking spice. I think between that was nutmeg. I don't think that was it.
Okay.
So just to kind of show off, like, cool, like, how do I actually use this thing? It's a canister of allspice, and so some of these are very, very finely ground. So you don't want to go into the canister with a big inhale because it's not going to be a good afternoon. Yeah.
That's why I know you were sneezing. Okay.
Disclaimer. Yeah. So mild, kind of, and some of them are more coarse, like black pepper is coarse ground. You're not going to inhale the honey. That would be impressive, but a little bit of allspice.
Joe, $100. No? Okay.
And what I find is, it's not that the kit is somehow tricking your palate or your nose to say like, oh, wow, I taste all 18 aromas that are present in this kit because I have it with me right here.
Right.
My experience is if I nose something and then I go nose the glass, if it's present, it becomes elevated. And so that's kind of your way to know like, ooh, like, yes, for me, I'm getting a nutmeg, or excuse me, an allspice component.
Right.
There's a clove thing going on too. So yeah, I think
so. That's kind of hilarious. I just smelled the clove and the allspice, and then I smelled my Woodenville. I didn't get those.
Interesting. I wonder if the finishing process kind of wiped that out.
Yeah, I would imagine so, right? Because I'm getting more of a leather sense off of it that you have here. It's going to have more of that tobacco and then dark chocolate components to it. And then I would even say going off your advanced kit, right? I'm getting more of a herbal tea and then like an apricot mixed with an orange bitters. Not a regular orange, but like an orange bitters. So it's a kind of a unique just in the nosing. And I'm just going off of the spices that you have on hand and then I have on hand here, right?
I think apricot, now that I've nosed that and gone back to the glass, even in the standard Woodinville, apricot for sure. That stone fruit, it's elevated. I love that. I recently had a coffee. I don't know if you get into craft coffee at all, but I had a coffee recently with apricot tasting notes, and I was like, okay, I'm down.
I may or may not drink enough coffee to supply an army daily. So I think I go through a pot and a half myself a day.
Nice.
But yeah, this is really unique. I'm really enjoying it, especially your kit. But the last question we always ask someone is, what is your favorite whiskey memory you've ever had? And it can be from childhood all the way until now. So do you have a memory where you drank a spirit or whiskey in general that just gave you that excitement in life, or that just really kicks and you just remember it this so much?
It's funny. I thought you were going to go, what's your favorite bourbon? It's like, well, which one's my favorite kid? There's that angle, because we have 3 of them. But I think these questions, I actually might answer them the same. So I'm a huge fan of William LaRue Weller.
Okay.
And the first time I tasted this over at a friend's house, I was not prepared for what I was about to experience. And just the fact, kind of similar to Larceny, we're drinking a wheated bourbon. So you don't have that big, heavy spice note that sometimes can get in the way of other more delicate tasting notes that are in there. But it was just this massive, cherry, vanilla, oak because of the age on it and the proof too. It's hard to say, is there a perfect bourbon out there? But for me, man, that every version of that, every batch of that I've had, I'm just like, if I had one, what's your, deserted island bourbon? That's it, man. So being able to try that over at a buddy's house and kind of open me up to that. I was really fortunate to do that kind of earlier in my whiskey journey. He was like, hey, I don't want you to go chase all this stuff and spend a lot of time and effort on this until you kind of know what you're getting into. And I was like, that's fair. And now it's like, man, if I had some of those moments again, some of the pours that I had that will never be around again because they're not even in production, is if I only knew, if I could have time capsuled those and saved them 10 years, now I'd have so much more fun with them. But it was a great experience just to be let's dive in the deep end. This is what crazy high-end good bourbon is like. And that's my memory that comes up.
Well, that's super exciting, right? Because you've had an experience that gave you a kind of hard whiskey to find, to be honest, right?
Exactly.
Most people aren't going to have that experience where they're going to go over to a friend's house and they're going to be like, well, try this. Not only try this, but try this. And then anything else you want to see, try it.
Yeah.
Some people are very secluded with their whiskeys, but I'm really happy to hear that you had an experience that brought you in the right direction and gave you something that you've never tried that you fell in love with.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest things that attracted me to the bourbon community as a whole was, to your point, there's a lot of industries, there's a lot of hobbies and categories where it's competitive. I found this bottle or this thing and I'm not going to share it with you. Haha, I got it. It's what is that? But that has never been my experience in bourbon. The guy might fight you to win the raffle or be the first in line to buy the bottle, but that same guy is the one that's willing to crack it open in the parking lot and share a pour with everybody, and because they want everyone to experience it. I'm like, that's so freaking cool. I love that.
No, 100%. And there's people all around the world that are giving that experience just from that. And Joe and I and Martin and Adrian are in different communities in the whiskey community itself, right? helping other people out, expanding their portfolios, and then just having a good time with each other, enjoying the experience, sharing samples where we can get it.
Totally.
And building this community that's actually worldwide now. It's not even nationwide for us, because we're talking to people in the Middle East, to France, to Germany, to Japan, to Australia. I have to send bottles to Australia here soon for BWF.
Wow.
So we're enjoying different things with different people from everywhere and having a good time. And nosing your bourbon is a good way to do that, because you guys and yourself can expand to different countries and say, hey, this is what we have in the US. What's your basic palate? Let's find out that, and let's expand it to your country and do it in this way and have fun with it and move in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on, but first and foremost, I know you gave a code for us, for our audience, to get this amazing thing, and it's what? Could you tell us really quick? I know it's at the bottom of the screen here, but I want to make sure other people know about it that don't watch YouTube or Spotify. So
you can learn more about the products that I offer. Not only it's the nosing kits, but I have some branded Glencairn glasses. So if you've never picked those up, there's some options that include a leather tasting note journal that's got pre-lined pages, so it makes it super easy to keep all of your tasting notes in one place. So feel free to check that out. It's over at knowsyourbourbon.com, and that's nose, N-O-S-E, yourbourbon.com. The code that I set up for Bourbon with Friends is BWF10. That'll give you 10% off any order placed before December 1st. So make sure to get your orders in for Christmas and the holidays that are coming up. And thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
100%. Thank you for coming on, Chris. We're really excited about everything that you're doing, and we're excited to see you move forwards in a positive direction. So thank you for coming on Bourbon with Friends. I know I really enjoyed it. Joe's been laughing at me in the background because I've been watching his face, and it's kind of hilarious watching him just watch me talk the entire time this time and not have Adrian or Martin on. But they're with some friends and family members this weekend. So thank you, Chris, for coming on Bourbon with Friends, and really enjoyed this. So,
cheers,
remember,
man.
everybody, a Bourbon with Friends can change the world. Have a great day or night wherever you're at. Thanks,
cheers.
Y'all.
Thanks.
That's it for this episode of Bourbon with Friends. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can also check us out on Instagram at BWF Podcast. Thanks for listening.